Hi everyone, I'm Maureen Brown, CEO and co-founder of Mosie Baby, and today I'm going to be joined by author Leslie Schrock. She is the author of Fertility Rules, the definitive guide to male and female reproductive health. Hi everyone, and I'm going to get her on. Co-founder of Mosie Baby, we help people inseminate at home with the first over-the-counter home insemination syringe kit. We've helped over 100,000 people, thousands of babies out there. Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
How's it going?
Great. It's really nice to be here.
Likewise. So let me share a little bit about you with anybody who's watching right now. But by the way, we will answer some questions, so feel free to leave them in the comments. We'll get to them as we have a chance during the conversation and at the end. You can have questions for me or Leslie. I love to see where you're watching from though, so if you have a chance and you feel like sharing, let us know where you're watching from, what city you're in, what state you're in, even what country you're in. So it's always fun to see that. So feel free to leave a comment down below, and if you want to share anything else, like how long you've been trying to conceive, or if you're new to this process, that's also helpful as well. So for now, let me tell you a little bit about Leslie. She is the author of Fertility Rules, the definitive guide to male and female reproductive health. And she, so this is a really educational and supportive book that Leslie spent a lot of time on, a lot of research, and she knows her stuff. She has everything in there from information about your menstrual cycle, how to time it right, sperm health, insemination, and all types of insemination. And she also is the author of Bumpin', The Modern Guide to Pregnancy, which was a breakout hit that mixed the latest clinical research with practical, sorry, I can't talk today, with practical advice for
We're
working
all
families.
having a week here. I'm so with you there.
There we go. But anyways, I'd love to make sure you have a chance to introduce yourself as well. So if there's anything I missed or anything you want to add or correct, please share with everybody a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've spent over a decade of my life working in health. And I think like so many people, I thought when it was my turn to get pregnant and start a family, how hard could it be?
Yeah.
And like so many people, like I'm sure some people who are watching right now, my journey was not at all straightforward. And so in the end, I had five total pregnancies, and I now have two young kids, both boys, 2 and 4. So there was a lot that did not go as I thought it would during that journey. And really, what I find to be so evident still, even in the 5 years since Bumpin' was first written, is that we're not talking enough about this journey openly. I talk about my miscarriages, my medically necessary abortion a lot, because I think it's important that people understand that it's not always a straightforward process. And a lot goes into it. And also that there are so many options. And, I am not even going to be bashful about the fact that I so appreciate and love that Mosie is available to people, because I think that, and it's something that was really important for me to write about in Fertility Rules, because oftentimes we feel like if we can't conceive, the only option is IVF. Mm-hmm. And it's actually not true. So rarely do you go straight to IVF. And if you're working with a clinician or a clinic that is just shooting you straight to IVF, you're probably not in the right spot. You need to ask why, get some more information. So I've conducted at this point hundreds of interviews with different healthcare providers, complementary practitioners, researchers, scientists, all kinds of people. I wrote a piece about sperm in The Economist, which was a very surprising topic, to cover with them. But to me, it's so critical that we not only really understand women's bodies and the limits and, these basic things that none of us are really told as children, but also to give men a seat at the table and involve them in the fertility conversation, because it's half their responsibility too. And yet I think that so many times men either don't participate because, either they don't want to, they don't know they need to, but really it's the latter, that no one has ever told them anything about their sperm health. They don't participate in the healthcare system the way that women do. So anyway, my mission is just to educate as many people as possible and to hopefully just make people feel less alone than I did as I was undergoing my journey.
Yeah, I know we align around that as well, and that's why it's great to talk to you. I always feel like, this is a club that nobody necessarily wants to be a part of, but once you join, you realize you've got to talk about it because you want to help other people in their journey.
Oh, yeah. And
so
it's a huge club. It's a huge club.
Yes, I know. It's unbelievable. And I think that, we see it, how the numbers are changing and shifting, and more people are recognizing that they might need a little support in their journey, which is great to see. And also, overall, sperm health is not, it's in the decline. And I think that also goes along with overall decline in health that we've seen across the country and other places. So there's a lot to consider when trying to conceive. And so I'd love to understand where I'm sure you've had a ton of conversations. Once people find out you're the author of this book, what are some of the things that you recommend people focus on first when they are starting on their journey?
It's a great question. And indeed, I am pregnancy and fertility Siri these days. So there is a lot. So there are things that are out of our control, like age-related impacts on egg quality, which there is nothing that you can take to do anything there, really. You can optimize your chances, but age just does take a toll. But there is also a lot within your control. So, if you have a partner, I always suggest that you do this together because the guidance is pretty similar for men and women with some notable differences. But the first is, with nutrition, I think we make it very difficult for partners, for anyone to really feel like they're successful when it comes to a diet. We have these crazy stories about, fertility diets and detoxes and fasts and everything. And the truth is, it really should be kind of an 80-20 approach to nutrition. So eating whole, unprocessed foods, avoiding trans fats and added sugars as often as possible. The Mediterranean diet is a great framework to follow if you just need some basic rules. But that's it. You don't have to deprive yourself all the time. If you can stick to it 80% of the time, and then you can enjoy the foods that you really love, that don't fit into that framework the other 20% of the time without binging, that's a great place to start. Reducing your alcohol
and that's for both, just to remind everyone, that's for the sperm source.
Yes.
And, the person carrying the baby. So these are things that both people can do. And also one thing that's really simple that I like to point out, because the consumption of, bottled and canned juices and sodas and Gatorades and all those kind of things is obviously pretty high in our country. That's sometimes one of the easiest, quickest things that you can do, is just eliminating those unnecessary extra drinks from your body. And that can also play a part in your cervical environment too. So there's acidity that can go into that, and from what you're intaking into your body, that can affect your pH balance. And so there's a lot that you can do. I love what you're reminding everybody here about. Just focus on 80-20. Just start small and keep going with it.
Yeah, and juices, sodas, sports drinks, crazy 32-ounce Dunkin' Donuts drinks, always look at the labels. All of these companies are required to have a label with how many grams of sugar appear in those items. So always read your labels. I think for both, it's also activity, moderate activity, not super vigorous activity for men. That can lead to a decrease in semen parameters. In women, it can stop ovulation.
Vigorous activity, where vigorous. You're, very hard
where you
work.
Can't
not
talk.
For most people, it's not a problem, but these are almost like professional athlete levels or high intensity workouts multiple times a week.
Sustained high intensity, but just because, and for some people, it's not even a professional level. It is just whatever is vigorous for them. So the talk test is a great way to know if you can talk through an activity, that means it's moderate. And if you can't talk, that means it's probably vigorous. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk for a second about sperm, because I think this is a thing that most even most men just don't know. Heat, sperm hate heat.
Mhm.
Saunas, hot tubs, really hot environments, hot car, cell phone batteries, laptop computers on the lap.
Yeah.
Avoid all of that. THC use. Yes, that's right. It is a plant, but marijuana is off the table when you're trying to conceive, and it should be off the table for around 3 months before you start to try. The reason is it decreases several semen parameters, but once you stop taking it, it comes back. The same is true of other medications, things. Actually, there's a hair loss product that causes a decrease in semen parameters. So it's one reason that I think it's so important that couples take a moment to do a preconception appointment, because for men and women, actually, medications can impact their fertility. There are also a lot of things for women specifically to weigh, because during pregnancy, some medications are not safe. And a lot of the time, they are labeled that way. Women get reproductive health labeling on everything pretty much. Men do not. So again, men, if you're watching.
That's a good point.
Yeah, there's
You're
no
so right
reproductive
about
health
that.
label for men.
We don't warn men about it, the effects of prescription drugs on their semen and their sperm.
No.
So somebody did have a question. I want to make sure we get to it, which is kind of around what we're talking about now, which was, why does sperm count matter when it only takes one?
Ooh, all right. So think about the vagina as an obstacle course, and it takes a lot of sperm to start at the top of the funnel and make your way through. And obviously they're going the other way. But the vagina has all kinds of filtering mechanisms that ensure that only the strong sperm survive. And if you don't start out with enough, you won't have enough get into the fallopian tubes to actually fertilize that egg. So what you need to do is start with a high quality sample with lots of healthy swimmers. It is a question people ask all the time, but it takes a lot, because you start with a lot and then a lot of them die off. And even when you get to fertilization, if you ever look at a picture, like under the microscope at an egg as it's being fertilized, you'll see
multiple
all of these sperm. Yeah, you'll see
they're
a
like
bunch of sperm.
fighting for it. Yeah,
they're fighting for it. So it's a really interesting, it's an interesting question. It's a common question. It just takes a lot, because there's a whole gauntlet of challenges for them to overcome.
Yeah, so I was at ASRM this week, and that's, for those of you who don't know, that's where all the fertility specialists go. It's their conference. And one of the things that I listened to was somebody talking about how we don't need to wait to screen men when trying to conceive. This idea of waiting, to discover if they, like with women, sometimes you have to wait to discover if they have an ovulatory issue or, progesterone issues, hormone issues. But with men, you can just screen them right away. And so that's something that I think eventually the industry is going to shift towards, is, there's a cost balance there, obviously, for the patient. But there are a lot of tests now online. We have one in our store, other places you can find them, to give you a little bit of insight prior to inseminating or on your conception journey, wherever you may be. I think that's one easy step that a lot of people can do at home. It's not all of them are comprehensive, right? So it's a window into your sperm health, and most of them do have a sperm count on those tests. So you can take a look in our store, but obviously, there's a lot of wonderful products out there. And if you guys have questions about that, let us know. We did have another question. So someone who, they have male factor, they've tried Mosie for 2 cycles and no success. What is the cycle for Mosie? So I'll share a little bit here. First, my heart goes out to you guys. I know that for some people, Mosie is the first option. Some people, it's a step in their journey, and some people, it's the last thing they try before moving on to other procedures. So know that for many people, we usually recommend 3 to 6 cycles, but no more than 6. At any point in that process, after 3 cycles, we definitely want you to consider your options, and that we want you to also check in with your doctor. If you have male factor, though, this is something where you also want to check in with your doctor if you're using Mosie. So this is something where your doctor can kind of guide you on if you're in a good place for Mosie, or if this is something where you might need to look at some alternative options in the clinic. The other thing to know, though, if you have male factor issues, or your partner has male factor, or your donor has male factor, sperm health is really a lot easier, I'll say, than egg health to rejuvenate. So it usually takes about 2 to 3 months to see improvement in the sperm health. So if you or your partner or your donor is experiencing any male factor issues, if they do make some changes, like Leslie was talking about, diet, lifestyle sometimes can be really quick and really effective, to be honest. Even so much as just sitting all day long, if they set a timer and stand up for 30 minutes and sit down for 30 minutes and stand up for 30 minutes to get that circulation going, that can be really helpful for people. So little steps like that, nutrients, and how you're taking care of your body are the first places to check. Also, tight jeans. Some guys like to wear tight jeans. Some guys like to relax in the sauna multiple times, a month or once a week, whatever it may be. You may want to just consider some of these things as well to support the sperm health, like Leslie.
And cycling, actually. If you're obsessed with your Peloton, you might need to take a little break, because that actually that has come up multiple times with reproductive urologists, and I have lots of great stories from these doctors, and like that is a common one. Like, well, I found out the guy was cycling over 100 miles a week, and as soon as he stopped, a couple months later, that was it. That was causing the reduction. Yeah. So I mean, it can be. This is the beautiful thing. I mean, you already said it. This is the beautiful thing about sperm health, though, is that there is actually a lot you can do, because oftentimes it is lifestyle related, and you've got to give it time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to just, you're going to stop the thing and the next day you're going to be able to, to turn around and get pregnant. But given that 2-3 month timeline, oftentimes it is. There's also, for men, often, varicoceles are very common. It's, when there's a vein in the testes that's blocking sperm from getting out. So that's treatable. More often than not, you can get treated for that. And so I think that just men should know that this is all within your control. Steroid use, also not a thing you want to be doing when you're trying to conceive. And it takes a while. Steroid use can take a very long time because it causes physical changes to the testes. So it can take 9 to 12 months, actually, to get your parameters back. But this is why going and seeing a medical provider, is so critical, as they can advise you on medication use. They can advise you on, existing prescriptions, future prescriptions, all of that. So, and be honest too, because some of my favorite stories from reproductive endocrinologists were about, seeing a patient who was obviously on steroids and that person denying it the entire time, which,
I think there's a lot of complex emotions that come in to the process. And for some people, you're right, it is hard to be honest, because they have to admit hard things, and so that is a good point. So thank you. I wanted to just acknowledge, I'm glad to hear that your partner's sperm has improved. And I'm hoping that you guys can continue in the right direction. And please feel free to direct message us too if we have anything else we can help with. So I don't know if you can take this one. I'm not qualified to take this one. Does finasteride, taken for enlarged prostate, affect male fertility? Are you aware of any studies on that or any research on that?
That is above my pay grade a little bit. I boot that one to the medical professionals, because everyone's situation is a little bit different. So
I can we can also reach out if you want to direct message us. If you ask that question, I don't want to just call you out in the chat here, but if you want to send us a direct message, I can pass that along to some experts that we have in our circle. So okay, tell me your thoughts on home insemination from your perspective. Where do you see that being a good process for someone to choose, and what should people consider when they're thinking about home insemination with Mosie Baby?
Yeah, listen, I think if you are in a heterosexual couple and you are having difficulties, the timeline that is given is, if you're 35 or older, you wait 6 months and then you seek medical treatment. If you're younger than 35, it's a year. And there is a good reason for this timeline that's very difficult. And like, I get it. I have been there. I have had 3 failed pregnancies. It's really hard to navigate this because you feel like that's just too long. But the reality is, if you're going to get pregnant, over 90% of people do get pregnant on their own with that time constraint. That said, if you have a known condition, either of you, gynecological condition, if you know that there's something going on with male factor, you should absolutely seek care sooner. That said, I also believe that there is a lot of overtreatment happening, meaning that because the fertility industry is a cash pay business and lives outside of normal insurance, it is not beholden to the same set of rules because you just either your employer gives you fertility benefits and that pays for it, or you, like most people, pay out of pocket. It means the incentives are not always aligned with patients, unfortunately. There is a lot of stuff that happens in the fertility industry that is not ethical. It's one of the reasons there's a whole section of fertility rules that has questions to ask your doctor before selecting one. Because 1 out of 5 people who go through IVF get pregnant later naturally. This is a study that came out pretty recently, showing, like, in a pretty compelling fashion, the study design was good. We obviously need to keep working on this, but it's clear that we're over-treating people. So to me, the beauty of Mosie is you can buy the kit and you can do it yourself at your house. And I have, by the way, other than just being a fan of Mosie, I have no relationship with the company other than really hoping that they're successful, because I think that, you guys are filling such a huge need, which is that if you're waiting to go into a clinic and you're on a wait list, or you're just like, I don't want to wait that long, again, you can go advocate for yourself, but oftentimes the answer you will be given is you need to wait a few more months, make some changes, before anyone will give you IUI or IVF. So I think Mosie is this wonderful cheat code that allows you to start before you have to actually undergo anything that's more invasive, and without medications, without anything. It also, and I don't know how many of you out here can relate to this, I certainly can, sometimes you're really sick of timed sex, or sometimes someone is sometimes you're gonna ovulate and your partner is getting on a plane that morning or the day
That
before.
was definitely part of our story for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, people don't, it's funny, as soon as I say this out loud, inevitably I'll get like an Instagram message or someone else who's like, thank God, because it really changed, infertility changed my relationship with sex. And it does. And it's not your fault. It's nothing you're doing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just like a lot of stress and performance, and it starts to feel like a job. And I say this as someone who got pregnant 5 different times. So there was like a lot of timed sex in my life. But I think that Mosie just is like, personally, I wish everyone had to do IVI or ICI even before starting IUI, which actually is so much more. What is the cost differential? What do you guys tell people? What percentage of the cost of IUI is doing Mosie?
Oh, like 5% or less, and that's for multiple cycles, right?
Yeah.
So that's if you're doing about 3 to 4 cycles. And I mean, it's even less if you get pregnant on the first or second cycle, but obviously it's also a small investment to make before going into those procedures, just like you were talking about, having people try something low intervention, low cost at home. Yeah, that is really what drives us as well. And just making sure we're advocating in the industry is another part of it. So a lot of people don't understand that we do have a voice out there, that we're advocating for you and options in the market to be considered in a lot of different places. So that is something, Leslie, I really appreciate that you said. And actually I was like taking notes as we've been talking about some of this stuff. I want to talk with you more. But I do want to make sure we have if anybody has any other questions, now's your chance. So please.
I want to acknowledge one comment. Yeah. I'm told for my age group, IUI has a lower success rate than IVF. So IUI, I'm just going to say the thing that you're not supposed to say. I kind of think IUI for a lot of people is not a good option. And there are a lot of reasons why. One reason that it is an option that is given so much is that it is cheaper than IVF and it's less invasive and everyone hopes it works.
Well, there's
but it
also
takes
that feeling of there's a need to try something a little bit lower intervention, low cost prior
right.
to IVF, which IVF not only is an investment in your, you know, from your bank account, it's also an investment in emotion, time,
Yes.
and, you know, logistics to make sure you're getting through the entire process.
Yeah.
So there are a number of people who don't even complete the process and, you know, have maybe one cycle. So go ahead, continue on. But like IUI is there in many ways to be that first step. And that's where we agree. Like there's a lot more options that should be considered.
Yes. And for some people, IUI does the trick and it's great, but it's a very specific person and couple where it works like the first time, you know? So I think it's just really important that, you know, if you're watching, your journey is going to be very specific. It's going to be different than your friends. It's going to be different than your sister or your cousin or whoever you see. And I think that looking at it as a stepwise journey rather than like jumping all the way to the end and going to IVF first, like we need to get away from that mentality because it's really expensive. It also takes an average of 3 IVF cycles to have a live birth. So I think we need to have a more incremental approach. And I've written a lot about this, even outside of Fertility Rules, that I really, really want to encourage more people to, in those moments where you feel like you're completely out of control, feel like you can do something. And I think that, you know, Mosie's a great option.
Oh, thank you. So one question did come in about, is it too late to have a baby at 45? So I'll let you answer this. I have my thoughts as well, but I want you to share your thoughts from your experience and research and everything.
Yeah. Okay. So age and fertility. Let's talk big picture here. Big picture, what happens as women age is there are less eggs in general because your egg supply declines over time because you're ovulating. And also more eggs are chromosomally abnormal. And it's just a function of age because your body is not as good at meiosis anymore. Meiosis is the process of creating sex cells, basically. So cell division becomes less efficient over time. There is nothing you can take and nothing you can do to make your body better at cell division as you age. So the decline starts for women in their 30s. It gets, you know, a little, it's kind of starts sloping at 35, a bit more at 37. 39 is when the number of chromosomally abnormal eggs really rises. And when you're in your 40s, I mean, there's, you know, there are charts that you can look at showing how many eggs need to be in the bank in order for you to have a good shot at getting a live birth. So is it possible to get pregnant naturally at 45? It is possible, though it is unlikely because your egg supply is just not genetically normal anymore, most of it. That said, people do get pregnant. I also, though, want to acknowledge that one of the reasons that people believe that it's just completely like a normal thing for a woman, like Hilary Swank saying that she had miracle twins at 48. Okay, so no offense to Hilary Swank. I'm sure she's a lovely person. The odds that she conceived those twins naturally, it's like, what is it, 1 in 2.5 billion? I mean, the odds are so low. Now, what probably happened there, and again, it's her, she has a right to privacy. She owes no one any answers. However, when you go on television and you talk about your miracle babies and you don't give people context around how those babies came to be, what I believe happened, my opinion only, is she either used previously frozen eggs from her 30s, most likely, or maybe from, you know, her another period of her life when she was not 48, or she used donor eggs, and she almost certainly did IVF with a double transfer. So, or maybe even more. Like, I don't know how many they put in there, but
I feel like if she truly did have a situation, a fluke situation or a rare situation, you would be talking about that. You would be disclosing that, like, oh my gosh, this was just truly a miracle. We, you know, had sex and got pregnant, but I think that she has not given the context as well, has raised my eyebrows, and I couldn't agree more. I think that there is this myth around getting pregnant is not so challenging because of Hollywood, and we all know that's not the case.
No.
And so I call it the IVF train. I think there's, this path that people get on and they don't want to admit it. And they, sometimes want to not share fully, which I understand, as well as the right to their privacy, but completely appreciate what you said. So if you are trying to conceive, though, to our community member who asked that question, there, as Leslie said, it's not completely out of the question. There are things that you can do, again, just to support your overall health, because everything that you can do to support your overall health is going to support that process. So that's one part
and your
that
partner.
you should pay attention to.
And your partner, because men experience age-related fertility decline in their 40s as well.
Or
So
your
it's
sperm
not,
source, if you're trying to
yes,
conceive on your own.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it on your own, I think the first step would be really take control of your health, and then get your baseline checked, see what's going on with your body, see what your AMH level looks like. It is not a great single indicator of your overall fertility. I will say that. I think a lot of people think if their AMH is low, they will never get pregnant. And eggs, it is the case where it does just take one. It takes one chromosomally normal egg to be in there and to meet the right sperm. So it's not impossible, but it is much harder as you hit your mid 40s. And it's just important to be realistic and do everything that you can control, because unfortunately there is no miracle pill, no amount of CoQ10 that you take that's really going to turn back the clock on your egg supply.
Yeah. So we have one last question and then we'll need to wrap up, but you've been amazing. You are truly a resource, and please check out her book, Fertility Rules by Leslie Schrock. So there's one more question, looking for your thoughts on resources to help pay for IVF. So there are a number of companies that have come out which kind of help this process. Love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, paying for IVF is really expensive. I mean, the first thing you always want to look at is if you or your partner's insurance at work. Like if you have fertility benefits, more and more employers are now offering it, such that people are starting to take jobs at Amazon just to get an IVF
Starbucks,
cycle
I think,
paid
was
for.
Another one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, I would say that, in order to kind of reduce the number of cycles that you'll need, do everything you can on your own first. But if you are in a situation where you need to pay for IVF, start with your company. And then there are fertility financing companies out there. There are 3 actually that come to mind: Future Family, Gaia, which is in the US now. It started in the UK, and Sunfish. So all of them do have fertility financing options, so that you don't need to go to a bank. Like, I'm not even sure what a bank would do with that request if you told them why you wanted the loan. So, and be really realistic about, about how much you can afford to, because a lot of people go into deep debt with this. So one of these products is a much better option than, using your credit card at Kindbody, which people do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Feel free to direct message me or Leslie if you have any other questions. We appreciate your questions, everyone. Please check out our book, Fertility Rules, and we'll be in touch. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
It's so good to see you. Bye.
Bye.